in a kingdom far from here, there was a beautiful maiden with silky, black hair, smooth, creamy skin, and luscious red lips. She was the king's only daughter, and she was kind and giving and vain. She had, after all, been hailed her whole life as the most beautiful maiden in all the land. Who could blame her then if she spent a little more time in front of her mirror each morning than was, perhaps, entirely good for her? When she was nearly 20, the princess was married off to the widower king of a nearby nation. In addition to her dowry and her gowns, she took only one thing with her: the large, gilded mirror from her chambers. Now, the widower king had a young daughter, and when our princess became queen, she saw to it that the girl was sent far from court. To be tutored, of course. She was not unnecessarily cruel to her stepdaughter, but knew that a child of her own must inherit in order to form a lasting alliance between her new home and her old. Time passed, and the little girl grew into a young woman, and the queen could no longer contrive to keep her from court. Worse, the queen had yet to bear a child to term. She became obsessed with the idea that the girl had somehow stolen the life from her womb, and therefore the lands and titles were rightfully hers. Her children's, that is. Then one day, the queen overheard a conversation between two courtiers, in which they named the young princess as the most beautiful woman in all the land. Unable to bear this final theft, for so she saw it, she called the girl to her chambers that night and bade her stand beside her before her mirror so she might view the reflections side by side. To her horror, while her own hair had gone gray and lost its shine, the girl's hair was still smooth as satin and black as ebony. While her own skin had grown rough and wrinkled, the girl's skin was still white and smooth as freshly fallen snow. While her own lips had begun to chafe and lose their color, the girl's lips were still soft and red as blood. A strange thought came to the queen. If she could only steal the girl's youth, then surely that would restore her own. And in her newly restored youth, surely she could finally bear a healthy heir. When the girl left, the queen summoned the kingdom's best huntsman and instructed him: take the girl out into the woods to a remote spot and kill her. As proof that she is dead, bring her heart back to me. The next day, the princess vanished, and that night the queen cooked and ate the heart that the huntsman had brought her. But when next she looked in her mirror, she was distraught to find that she was no younger, no more beautiful than she had been the night before. Enraged, she confronted the huntsman, demanded to know what had happened, why she had not become more beautiful, why he had given her a false heart. The huntsman confessed everything, unwilling to kill the beautiful child. He had gone to the king, who had in turn sent the girl to a neighboring kingdom where she might be safe. A dreadful calm settled on the queen, and she left the huntsman and went to the village that surrounded their palace home. She smeared her hands and face with dirt, traded a fine piece of jewelry for the tattered dress of a peasant woman's back, and traded another fine trinket for a red apple from the apothecary. Thus equipped, she traveled to the neighboring kingdom, where she knew her stepdaughter must be hidden. And when she arrived, what luck to find it a market day. And luckier still, there was her stepdaughter, browsing a stall selling stay laces and combs. Are you alone in the market? Cooed the queen. I am, said the princess. What is it that you want? Have you come for a hand-me-out from the pretty princess, old woman? No, bridled the queen, the witch, the hag. In fact, I've come to give you something. And here she produced the sweet-looking red apple from the apothecary. I'm not hungry. Oh, just a bite. Just one bite of my wares and you'll never want of another. One bite is all it takes. The girl was wary, but at last agreed. If you take a bite, then I will try your apple. So the queen took a small piece of the apple into her mouth, but tucked it into her cheek, and clever woman that she was careful not to swallow even so much as a drop of the apple's juice. Satisfied, the girl took the apple and bit into it with a satisfying crunch. And when she had swallowed her bite, she sneered at the hag. This apple is nothing to brag about. Why, it's bitter and mealy, and it's bitter. Cackling, as only the truly mad can, the queen left the market and the kingdom and returned to her palace home. Thinking her stepdaughter well and truly dead, she believed herself the most beautiful once again, and so lived contentedly for many months. Then one day, a messenger from the neighboring kingdom arrived to discuss the impending wedding of his prince and the queen's own stepdaughter. And the queen was overtaken by an irrational fear of her stepdaughter, thinking her somehow immune to all her attacks, somehow immortal. Yeah. A more rational woman perhaps would have thought herself cheated by the apothecary, or considered that the other kingdom had more powerful medicines or better doctors than her own. But the queen was too far gone in her hate for such thoughts. For days, her advisors pleaded with her, begged to go to the princess's wedding, make peace with her stepdaughter, and the queen refused. At last, her advisor suggested that perhaps she could make a gift to the princess, some small token of well wishes for her. Yes, send her the gilded mirror from my chambers as a token of my wishes for her. And Snow White, for surely you've surmised the princess's name by now, Snow White, for her part, viewed the gift as her final triumph over the vain and wicked queen, and hung it prominently in her chambers, where she consulted it each morning for, perhaps, a little longer than was entirely